Guys, I'm always talking about being young because I'm young. I represent being young in the media space. And right now we have Honorable Stanley Sakupwanya, who is joining us to be talking about everything youth, because this is really an important aspect, because look, we move from generation to generation, and the next generation to come really should be carrying the torch, carrying the flag of what we leave as an imprint in their hearts. Honorable, good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Lovely to have you on the show. Now, we are talking about the youth. First of all, what is your desire for the youth? Just as a quick paint of what we're going to be discussing today.
Well, firstly, youth are an important aspect, considering that we're the majority of the population, not just in Zimbabwe, in Africa and in the world. And the number one thing is inclusion. In the decision-making spaces where it's important, their voices need to be heard. And that way, you know, we can make an impact. We appreciate, obviously, that government instituted the youth quota, which allowed for 10 young members of parliament, including myself, to be members of parliament. Then, obviously, it was extended to the women's quota, where 10 of them have to be under 35 for them to get into parliament. So it's a step in the right direction for us, and I think representation in that aspect, in the political space, in the decision-making space, is really important.
Yeah, so I mean, you speaking about that, just kind of thinking, Kuti, sometimes we, like, I'll give an example. My father, I'll say, if I'm like, hey, Dad, I think this business should be run this way, and then he'll be like, I've been doing this for years and years and years. How have you found that? Has it been a problem in trying to represent what you believe as youth should be done in our country, pertaining to our political situation and everything else pertaining to Zimbabwe as a youth?
Well, to be heard, you need to be able to push to be heard. At least if you've got an in point, like I said, with us being in Parliament now, means to say that we've got some form of platform within which we can speak in the House that actually matters. So it's a matter of, now that we're there, what do we do about it so that we have more youth involved in politics and otherwise? And I think since we got in, it allowed for the establishment of the Parliamentary Youth Caucus, which cuts across, there's no political determination in that aspect, because it's just about all young members of parliament coming together and then agreeing on youth matters that we push jointly. And I think this is very important, that whenever a young person finds themselves in such spaces of influence, that they take advantage of that and make use of it so that more youth can be encouraged to be involved.
Yeah, that's really good. Now, we're talking about the budget consultation 2025. Why do you think that is important for the youth to take part in?
The budget is the one that determines the direction of the nation. And usually the Minister of Finance, when he presents his budget, there are aspects that you'd find that you can tell which one is being prioritized, in the sense of agriculture, obviously because of El Nino and other things. But in every space of the economy, the youth are there. You can talk about agriculture with young farmers. You can talk about mining with artisanal miners. In fact, almost all of them are young people.
Exactly.
You've got your SME, women in SME. The SMEs are being done again by young people. Education is young people. So every aspect of the economy has young people. So it's important that when ministries present their budget bids to the Ministry of Finance, that consideration must be there to say, what are you doing for the young people in your respective and relevant ministry? On top of that, there are other things like, obviously, your Empower Bank, the Ministry of Youth itself needs to be capacitated, and it's important that the youth play their voices out to say, we want this to be done for us to be able to be heard and to be able to do what we can in the economy, contributing towards our economy.
Right. Now, obviously, speaking about being heard and stuff, I do know that there's a conference happening over on the 18th and the 19th of October, which is this weekend. Can you give us more enlightenment about that?
So the Youth Caucus, what we decided to do was, instead of us going to budget seminar and then presenting youth matters, our number one role as parliamentarians is representation. You don't represent people if you don't hear from them.
Right.
So what we decided to do was to create the first Youth Inclusive Budget Conference, now that we're in Parliament, which is this weekend. And what we said we'll do is, we're going to call out every ministry official to come. So, as you know, there's the youth desk that was instituted by government recently, where every ministry is supposed to have a youth desk, a director for the youth specifically, so that the youth can be able to use that as an avenue into that ministry. So they're coming. And then ours is to create the platform where the youth themselves can meet with the youth desk and understand what the ministry has to offer. Part of the ministry's bids to Ministry of Finance. Ours is, as the MPs, is then to sit on them and say, from your ministry, what are you doing for the youth?
For the youth.
For us to then say, let us approve this budget because this Ministry of Transport has created this space of their budget for the youth or for youth inclusion. Even if it's drug and substance abuse, it doesn't just affect the youth ministry. It includes Ministry of Health, it includes the police to say, how much are you using towards drug and substance abuse? Rehabilitation centers are run by the Ministry of Health. What is the youth desk doing in terms of that? And so we're putting the youth together with the relevant youth desks so that we can create a document that we present to Ministry of Finance and say, look, from each ministry, there has to be this for the youth, there has to be that for the youth.
Excellent. So in terms of accountability, Honourable, what measures have you put in place for accountability? Say the ministry gives you $10 million. In terms of accountability pertaining to the youth, and not only just focusing, I don't know, maybe in Harare or the city, how is your accountability aspect throughout the whole of Zimbabwe? What have you done for that in terms of the youth? Are they excitable youth? You know, sometimes I could just add 1 million to vendor. You know what I'm saying? How have you put and what measures have you put in place for that?
So how government works, as you would know, is that we've got Parliament, which does representation, oversight, and legislation. And then you've got your the ministries, the executive. Now, the executive is the one that does the implementation. Our point is once we have lobbied for the amounts that go to the youth through the various ministries, through our MPs, because Youth Caucus, why it's different from the Youth Committee, is that the Youth Caucus cuts across every ministry. Right. So we've got a member of Parliament, a young member of Parliament, that is there in every single committee that has oversight of all our ministries. Meaning to say that once they're given their budgets, it can be Ministry of Health, for example, our member of Parliament who sits in the Ministry of Health Committee is then able, after they've been given their budgets, to say, we're making a follow-up on what you've done pertaining to the youth as the ministry. Or even if it's Ministry of Agriculture, they talk about youth business units, whereby when the balls are established, there has to be a garden done, and the youth are the ones who are supposed to be responsible for that. And it's then easier now for the Member of Parliament to then sit with the Minister and say, we were given this budget on the basis that we lobbied for this aspect for the youth. Give us the results. We want to see artisanal miners. We want to see that budget that was set aside for that. What have you done? So that is our aspect of accountability, using parliamentary legislation to have oversight of the ministries in that light.
Excellent, very excellent. Now, you were in Armenia.
Yes.
And there was a conference there.
Yes.
Do you want to just enlighten us about what that conference was about?
Absolutely. That was created by the IPU. Young parliamentarians globally were able to meet and discuss aspect of education so that we don't lose a generation. The areas that were highly focused on was global disasters. Of course, we know about climate change, and we've seen its effect in Zimbabwe. The COVID times, the El Nino drought, even the floods that happened in Chimanimani, for instance, where a lot of schools and bridges were destroyed. And it was an aspect of coming together to understand and discuss how we can ensure that whatever happens globally, even political wars and otherwise, we ensure that the young person is not affected, especially in terms of education. Aspects that we're lobbied for, which we're also lobbying for now, is free education. Right. So that children can, you know, we used to do that in Zimbabwe. Obviously, economic challenges affected us, but we want to lobby again for that. And even in that light, when we were at the global platform, we talked about things that were understood, that as much as we want free education, it can only be bolstered by a stable economy. So things such as sanctions need to be removed so that we can get that stability back and implement things such as free education. We then also went on to aspects of feeding schemes like we're doing in Zimbabwe now, where we've reintroduced that children go to school in the rural areas and able to get a meal a day, so that they don't have to worry about the troubles at home, and they're more motivated to go back to school and stay in school. Of course, Zimbabwe still have a long way to go, but the Education 5.0 is a step in the right direction because there is recognition that skills are a very important tool that we have to introduce amongst our young instead of just being bookish.
Beautiful, beautiful. So this conference that's just bringing us back now to Zimbabwe on the 18th and the 19th of October. Who is coming? You said the ministers are going to be there. Who else can I come? Or the schools come? Who's coming to this conference?
So what we've done, to get the conference in order, we're in partnership with Zimbabwe Youth Council and Zimbabwe Institute. Together we drafted this whole program, and then we said for the first one, because it's the first of its kind, we'd open up to all youth. And what they do, there's a platform within which they just register. If they get in touch with the youth council offices, I think that they're across the country, or the Ministry of Youth, through the youth council, they register, and all the youth who are interested, they indicate which ministry because what's going to happen is the youth desk are going to come on the 2-day seminar, and then we're going to put them into slots to say, those who are interested in agriculture, there's your Minister of Youth desk, and the young MP who sits in that committee
will be
and
there.
They have their plenary sessions directly.
Okay, perfect. We've run out of time, and I have so many questions.
Okay.
Goodness. But then I do know that we can find you on social media.
Absolutely.
And what's your social media handle?
I'm on Twitter. Just type Stanley Sakupwanya. You'll find me on Twitter. Yeah,
I'll ask all my questions on that.
Fair enough.
Thank you, guys. We've come to the end of our show this beautiful, wet, whimsical Wednesday, and we will see you again bright and early tomorrow, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. See you tomorrow.
Konapo, ipapo, ba ZTN Prime, DSTV channel 294, the place to be.